Hey, what's up, everybody? Right here, we're looking at the brand new Unicorn.studio homepage. Just about to finish it, and I had this idea that wouldn't it be cool if I did a speedrun video where I recreate every scene on this homepage as quickly as possible. Sort of an uncut slapdash, dive right into it, crazy tutorial. Yeah, it could be an interesting way to just see all the things that are possible and how easy they are to build in Unicorn.studio. So let's just jump right into it. Let's start with this scene right up here, the hero image. I'm going to jump over here, create a new project, and dive in. We're going to learn a lot of cool, interesting techniques you can use to make this stuff happen. And let's dig in. So for that kind of inner glow, we're going to rely on blend modes and this background layer. Background layer is a gradient. Actually, no, it's not even how we did it. We didn't even use background. We got our shape layer here with stroke. Stroke is going to be white. And we're going to get a fill gradient layer effect that we're going to apply with a blend mode so that we really just see the border. And then we can do a cool color palette here. And I think for the scene, it's radial. You can see it's kind of emanating equally on all sides here. So we got this radial gradient that is slowly moving, and it kind of like dips in and out a little bit. It's because we got a black layer, a black color in the gradient. So you can kind of see that happening there. And then the way that we get the glow effect is we're going to use zoom blur. I had it using just like a regular Gaussian blur at first, but I kind of like how this one keeps the corners looking kind of crisp. Gives it a neat, more angular structure. And then the next thing is the ASCII. You know, we see this sort of ASCII dither effect that's sort of half blended into the scene here. So we will just go and find that. No, not that one. There it is, glyph dither. And I used a custom glyph for this one. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to go and select custom. And it should be right up here in my image bank. Yeah, so I just zoom in there. This is a PNG image. Each cell, each block of letters here is 40 by 40 pixels. So that's a requirement to do a custom glyph. And it can be as long as you want. And it'll start on the left, and as the brightness increases, it will move to the right. So I'm going to go ahead and select that, and then tone down the mix here. But you can see, we can see some of those characters. The dark areas is the dot and then the dash and so on. I'm just going to get a full zoom out here. There we go. And if I hide that, oh no, I don't want to hide that. Now I'll hide it. You can see all of my characters here as you would expect. But we're just sort of going for this border vibe here. And I did forget, I want to have my light trail as well. But we want that to be glyph dithered too. And I'm just going to bigger radius, bigger tail, a little bit more bloom. It was kind of more of a purpley. Yeah, I mean, that's it. That's the scene pretty much. And you can see right there, this looks really smooth, the mouse trail, because it's running at 120 FPS. The editor is 60. So it looks kind of different when you speed up the FPS, all the other parameters, but you just kind of got to play with that. All right, so scene one, check. We did it. Let's see what we have next. Okay, so this one kind of shows off different events. We have a scale event, we have a hover event, and we have a scroll event. So it's kind of all three in one scene. Let's jump in and make it. So it's a 3D shape that's on top of a gradient. I'm not going to try to make it look like a perfect match, but will do my best. And the underlying kind of light, interesting texture comes from an FBM noise layer, which kind of gives you this smoky, natural cloud kind of look, which we have featured in that orb reflection. So I'm going to just start off with something, and then we can play with it once we get the orb in there. And for that, we just have a sphere. I'm going to change the lighting here to match the purple tone a little bit better. I'm going to turn this Fresnel down, and then if we want to just crop or clip everything, rather, we just turn off show background. And if you saw, it has this kind of like cool, almost God rays effect. That's something that comes from the refraction. If we turn up the dispersion there, we can really see that effect. And then we want to play with this so that it fits nicely. So that's the base scene that we have here. Let's add some events. So the first one we're going to add is up here. I'm going to go up here. It's scale. I believe it's at default at 50, and the initial one is 20% maybe. So yeah, that's kind of what it does on the site. I think we have a somewhat nicer, more gradual easing curve there. I'll do 500. And it also has a little bit of delay, so we can just drag that. Because we're going to scroll, we don't want it to fire before it gets scrolled into the viewport. The next event is actually on the FBM layer. It's the thing that makes it look like it's like a planet, a gas planet that's spinning a little bit. It won't actually do anything if we spin the orb or the sphere itself, but if we move the FBM layer position, it actually looks like it's a texture mapped to the sphere, and it's rotating like an axis. So I want the FBM's X position to move up and down, or go left and right while we are scrolling up and down the page. So that will be scroll and view. I'm going to select position, and minus 5.7 was the start, and for the end I'll just do 100. And then this up here is a little preview of the viewport and where the animation is in its progress and where it starts and ends. But I want it to start before it actually gets into the viewport so that it looks like it's always spinning when I'm scrolling. And I'm going to make it end. So this is the full height, basically. It's always going to be running when start position and end position are both at 100. And this gives you a little, it feels like there's like a little weight to it. So we have start, we have our scroll, and the last thing was also in the FBM, it kind of gets, this is like a stormy clouds, it gets a little bit crazier, faster. And I think that was probably speed of the FBM animation. So I'm going to just, okay. So I'm hovering, and I'm doing my hover preview here, and I see that. Maybe it's actually like more like 125. and make that more gradual. Shorter, rather. And then I think I also changed the scale of the background. I don't know if I made it bigger or smaller. Yeah, I made it smaller. Yeah, so that's it. We can, play with the interaction in the test studio. No, we want the test studio. Yeah, so I can actually do something like, change the size, have a scroll. So now it's only going to hover when I'm hovering over the scene itself. And I can play with the scroll here. That's working well. Yep, great, check. Okay, what's next? All right, this 38 KB text. Let's go ahead and make a new project. Let's see, how do we do this one? Few ways. Depending what you're going for, there's different optimal versions of any scene. Whether you want transparency, whether you want just it to be simpler, you should always make it as simple as possible. And another rule of thumb is any dynamic layer, something that's animated or that moves, you want to keep it as high up on the layer stack as possible, because things below on the bottom will auto render and then just create a texture that feeds into the other things. All I'm trying to say with that is it's more performant. Fewer layers need to render in real time if you stack the static layers below. I'll just give you an example of that right now. So I'm going to use wisps. It's kind of like these stars. You can do a lot of interesting things with them. They move. You can make them move fast, blink fast. They wander around, and then you can give them direction. And there's a lot of neat things you can do using this plus blend modes. So yeah, I don't actually remember how I made the one on the site, but here's one way you could do it, where we don't actually mask it with the text, but instead we use multiply with the wisp layer. If I'm going to do it the other way, I can instead just make the wisp layer normal, and with text, I can mask it. And if I even want it to look just like the other method, I can turn on the background for the mask. But if we're thinking about performance, this method's actually less optimal than the previous one, because now this text layer needs to render every draw call. Whereas before, this text layer is going to be compressed and just served as a texture in the rest of the shaders above it. So I'm going to keep it like that, because that's the way to do it most performantly. So I think it's like 38 KB is what it said. It was probably overused grotesque, which is the display font on the site. Make it much bigger. Also, working with smaller components on a site, and depending on how you scale everything, you'll probably want to use relative units for things that you want to scale down proportionally. So for that, I'm going to do relative on font size and relative on the width, so that it just kind of scales down and always fits. You can go to these other viewports and do changes if you want to use fixed, or change anything else to make it fit better. But this is a pretty straightforward way that works for most use cases. Now for the effect, you can see it's basically just a skewed wisp with a lot of speed. And I think I have a color there. Yeah. So maybe it's a little bigger there. Going to Move the letter spacing in a bit. And then we just have a bloom on top. Play with the threshold here, I think. I think it's somewhere in the middle. And we can tint that a little bit to kind of match the color. Yep. That looks right. That's pretty much it. All right. Great. Check. Next one. This is a sort of like a dot grid mask over two images, and they have some kind of wavy light beam over top. So let's go see what we can do with that. These images are going to be pretty far back, I think, in my image library. Where's my framer image? Where is framer? There we go. All right, so each one of these is, again, we want to make it relative, and I'm going to make it auto for height. That's just so that we ensure that it always is kind of locked from an aspect ratio standpoint, and it will scale down nicely. Okay, so for this one, let me just think what we did here. Okay, so we have two different light beams. That's one of the effects. It's what's making these wavy lights. And in order to make them mask over both of these images, one thing I could do is just make these two in Figma or somewhere else. I could make them a single image. Then we wouldn't have to worry about this issue that I'm about to explain. But since we are doing it like this, I will just show you how to handle that. I'm going to use a shape, and for lack of having a discrete group object, a shape is basically can act like a group of effects. So I'm going to have beam 1, I think it is Nova, and I'm just going to duplicate that. So we have beam 2, and then I can make the shape black and take advantage of the blend mode. So the shape is sort of the container layer for these effects, but I still get access to all the properties of the shape layer, like opacity, border radius is pointless here, but what's important is the blend modes. So there we go, multiply. This is basically what's making that mask here happen. But we also have that wavy effect, so I'm just going to add a third effect in the stack, the sign, and there you go. That's the basic component of the scene. I think the color here is a little bit brighter. I'll change that to be the same. And finally, we have a pixelate effect. It has those dots. That's actually the pixelate effect, and it's got this property called cell radius, where you can make it look like a dot grid. And also, I'm just going to turn the track mouse up here. You notice that we could move our mouse, and it seems like it affects the position of these waves. And there you go. That's it. Okay. On to the next one. I think there's just one. Nope, there's two more. Okay. Make it pop. So this is like a metallic looking little text lockup here. It's using our custom SVG extrude effect. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the refractive background. So there's no like materials. These aren't actual 3D models. They're ray traced fragment shaders, which just means that we can use them to distort underlying textures. They can have just solid colors too, but the most interesting thing you can do with them is refract and reflect underlying textures, or really any texture in Unicorn Studio. So to create our metallic looking texture, I'm going to use a just basic gradient, and then, just throwing in a little bit of variance here makes it look more realistic. And I can hit play and we can scale it. So that will be the input into the refraction for our custom extruded SVG. I'm going to select it right here. When you prepare your SVG, you got to outline, stroke, and union so that it's a single path. Even though this has a bunch of individual paths and letters to it, the actual SVG is a single path. That's super important. Otherwise, you're going to see some weird looking cropping or parts of it missing. So now I turn that off and I can see the effect already looks like it is made out of metal. Here I turned it from refract to reflect. So this really, gives it that metal look. And we can play with smoothing a little bit just for some interesting edges here. And I think it was spinning a bit faster than that. I'm going to turn down the extrude just a bit. And it also had a hover event. So when we hovered it, we turned up some rounding, which looked pretty cool. That's too much. Maybe a little quicker. Yeah. Fun. And it also sped up. See. Make that just quick. Yeah, I mean, that's it. One little important design touch is just some more dispersion, gives it that chromatic aberration. Yeah. Oh, and it does follow the axis a little bit. So it has this axis tilt property. I can make it follow the mouse too with track mouse. Most effects have that, but this one uniquely has axis tilt, so it can kind of look at the mouse. All right, check. There's one more. Let's see. Okay, it's this kind of starburst thing on the bottom. Really rusty on this one. I made this a while ago. Let's see if I can figure it out. Okay. So I think this one uses a gradient base. Do 180 here. And we have wisps on top. Oh, no, it's simpler than that. This is just going to be a black background. I'm going to have wisps. I'm going to make them a little bit skewed. 90, and they're going to be traveling. I don't know if there's a lot of that. Maybe a little bit more skewed. And then we're going to use this polar distort effect. Yes. So this takes the left edge of the texture and then wraps it around the center here, this middle part. So anything that's moving left to right will look like it's emanating from the center point here, which is pretty cool. We have this blend, because you can see the seam here where it's wrapping. We can just smooth that seam out with this property. So that's down here. Let's see how this looks. Pretty good. If you want the scale to be a little bit more. And we have this our classic color that we use here. All right, so then there's this very bright star-looking thing rotating here. That is a beam. One of the options here is star. And that's pretty much it. We just give it a little bit more definition there. Bottom center. And lastly, there's just a vignette over top. Bottom center. And now, yeah, I think the only difference is just kind of brightness here. Yeah, not perfect, but that's pretty much it. You just play with that a little bit, and you'll get somewhere good. All right, we did it. Every scene on the new Unicorn Studio landing page in 25 minutes. Thanks for watching.